Good afternoon, honorable members. When the business of this House suspended for lunch, the honorable member for Mangrove Creek, South and Central, Andrus, had reserved the floor for the member for Angleston. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Angleston.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, I rise on behalf of the people of Angleston, who I feel so privileged to represent in these hallowed halls. And before I begin, Speaker, I want to pay homage to someone who died a few days ago, who was very close to me. His name was George Forbes, sometimes known as Alfred. He was a commander-in-chief for my political efforts, all of my political life, from the moment I ran in Angleston in 2002. He was there with me. He was incredibly loyal, incredibly faithful. He was a true subscriber to the lofty, high ideals of the Progressive Liberal Party, of which I also subscribe. And recently, he left us, and has left an incredible void. For me, I feel a little out of sorts, because every step of the way, he's been there with me, now in my 4th term politically. And so I wanted to pay tribute to him in this Parliament, because in terms of nation building and his involvement in our organization, he has played his part. And I want to extend condolences to his family and to the Charles Vincent Street community, where he was beloved. I believe he was also employed at the Ministry of Transport as a messenger there, and the Bahamas Maritime Authority, and there also was beloved. And I also want to recognize the passing of someone who sat in this Parliament, former Member of Parliament, Mr. Irvin Knowles, who recently died, a Long Islander who represented the Cat Island constituency and who very interestingly crossed the floor of this Parliament to join the Progressive Liberal Party. I think he was with BDP. And he joined the Progressive Liberal Party and became a minister of the government and contributed mightily to the national development of this country. And I want to extend condolences to his wife, Stella, who is a gem, a beautiful woman, and their children, and the extended family, some of whom I went to school with, and I pray that his soul will rest in peace. Speaker, before I begin the presentation on the issue at hand, I wanted to respond to what I heard for the Commercial Enterprises Act. As you recall, I hoped to have intervened, and now the opportunity arises. And the issue that came up was that this bill somehow preserves the concept of Bahamianization, which is a fundamental principle that if a Bahamian is qualified, no work permit will be issued. It's the right of first priority of the Bahamian worker in the country of his or her birth. This act, however, to the contrary, eliminates what would have been the normal due process to establish this principle. And that normal due process would be the labor certificate to say that there's no one else, the advertisement to show that you've put it out there to the wider Bahamian society to see if a Bahamian is available. And that's done away with this, because what it's in effect done was is to create a fast track for work permits. And then the application is lodged to the Department of Immigration, and if the director don't answer in 14 days, and then it is deemed approved. This is in effect a way of giving what is in effect automatic work permits. That's what it comes down to practically. From a practical point of view, automatic work permits, whether or not a Bahamian is available, it doesn't matter. In fact, this is being treated as a concession to industries, types of industries which is set out in the Act that establish headquarters or whatever it is within this country. They will get work permits up front. The member for Tall Pines was saying his opinion of Bahamianization. There's no room for an opinion on Bahamianization. It's a fundamental policy of governance upon which this nation was established. So the opinion of the member for Tall Pines, no disrespect, is totally irrelevant. And in fact, it was completely off course. Bahamianization is not a matter of opinion. It's a public policy. And Mr. Speaker,
where is it written?
and the member's asking where it's written. When you serve in cabinet, you will understand the importance of public policy, Mr. Speaker. Oh my goodness, it's so sad. You need training, sir.
Honourable member for, the chair recognizes honourable member for East Grand Bahama on a point of order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The member's being misleading at best.
Okay.
The Commercial Enterprises Act is very specific in its intent. It speaks to industries that are either underrepresented in the Bahamas or not represented at all. The classes of business or activity that it contemplates giving these, as she calls it, concessions to, as the member calls it, giving concessions to, are very defined. As the member for Yamacraw outlined when he read the section of the Act, it speaks to what is expected from these entities on the granting of that expedited process. It is very misleading to give the impression to the Bahamian people that somehow that the Act gives some undue advantage or concession to these institutions that are not available to average Bahamian companies. It is not true. Bahamian companies or Bahamian individuals can apply under the same Act and be entitled to the same concessions. The fact of the matter is that the industries that are of interest here, and the member knows this because she was in cabinet before, she was in government before. I'm addressing the point. I'm addressing the point. You raised the point, and I'm just clarifying it for Bahamian people, because it's important, Mr. Speaker, for the Bahamian people to understand that there is nothing new here other than the expediting of the process. That is all there is here. And so I don't want the Bahamian people to be misled into believing that there's something unusual here. There isn't, Mr. Speaker. And so when we talk about Bahamianization, we're talking about creating new industries that gives Bahamians the opportunity to learn skills. And we talked already about what is already available as a result of this Act, Mr. Speaker. So we shouldn't be disingenuous about that.
Thank you, honourable member.
The member could talk as much as he wants in this House. But the bottom line, Mr. Speaker, this legislation has violated the principles of Bahamianization in this country. You can get a work permit under this Act, whether or not a Bahamian is available. In fact, you won't even know, because the normal due process has been eliminated. So the member don't come here with no fancy syrupy talk, man. We're not into syrup and sweet talk today, man. We want the truth for the Bahamian people. You have violated the principles of Bahamianization in this legislation. And it is not a matter of opinion. The Bahamianization policy is an established pillar of our national life. And so it's not one for what it means to me, and it's not that kind of thing, ladies and gentlemen, Speaker. It ain't that kind of thing, Speaker. And this administration, and in fact, you know, this very clause, this type of clause, this soft language used in this legislation is the same language used in legislation that governed pre-1967 in Grand Bahama. Same type language, same type language. You put a little concession there, say, you got to train Bahamians. In fact, under the Bahamianization policy, Mr. Speaker, first of all, you can't get it unless there is a Bahamian, unless there is no Bahamian. And then after you get it, the work permit, then you must train a Bahamian. This is saying you can get it, and you should train a Bahamian, but it doesn't say what will happen after you train that Bahamian. It says it's capacity building, Speaker. This has softened the position of generations of policy of Bahamianization in this country. And I don't care what the member for East Grand Bahama says, he cannot change the facts, Speaker. Speaker, I want to speak to the issue of land, Mr. Speaker. Land has important meaning to the economy and to economic development in this country. It is part of the aspiration of human beings in terms of housing or access to wealth, for agriculture, for enterprise. Land is one of the most important components of economic and human development, Speaker. It's a center of wealth. And the history of land in this country, Mr. Speaker, is a tragedy and an injustice, because it is lined in corruption in this country. That's why, Member for Yamakro sort of touched it. But, there's some reality. No, and I give him credit for that, because I know he's getting pressure on that side, because that type of analysis is not, I don't think, welcome. But the history of land in this country, Mr. Speaker, explains much about the inequity that Bahamians experience and the imbalance in distribution of wealth in the Bahamas. Yes. We see things as they are in this country. And we ask, have we ever asked why? Have we accepted as the normal scheme of things? I saw an interesting piece in Creighton and Saunders, Dr. Gail Saunders, both historians, and they were talking in their book, A History of the Bahamian People. And they were speaking specifically about Sir H.G. Christie. But they were alluding to the phenomena at the time by the elite privileged few. And in this piece, this is what they say. Because we have to understand how we get here. This is not a natural scheme of things. And what they say is that land was a commodity, a natural resource of tremendous potential for personal wealth and power. They say of Christie, he is said to have had, and I'm quoting, an unconscious ambition to take over the entire Bahamas, if only to divide it up again for sale and profit. In his voracious appetite, and that's my words, for land, he, and I'm quoting, and his emulators took advantage, not only of the demand as time went on, clearly stimulated by advertising, but took advantage of the immensely favorable local circumstances, the shortage of money, the failure and hardship of traditional agriculture, the local farmers' ignorance of the value to others of their beachfront properties, lands, muddles and tenuous titles, and an inefficient, if not actually corrupt, Surveyors General's Department and Registry. And I'm going on, I'm quoting, saying that they took advantage. Over the years, Bahamian realtors, I'm reading from one of our history books, one of our distinguished historians. Over the years, Bahamian realtors built up a veritable land bank of properties. Some bought at windfall prices, but most being items on which options and agency agreements were held. Speaker, on the 12th of June, 1964, 3 women, poor Cat Island farmers, were sentenced to prison for contempt of court. Their names were Adeline Ambrister, Janetta Roll. Those 2 women went to jail for 28 days, and Virginia Roll, who went to jail for 21 days. They were adverse claimants in a quieting action brought by their own Member of Parliament, Sir H.G. Christie. And the land in question was known as Cat Island Farms Limited. No, the company in which he was a shareholder was Cat Island Farms Limited, and the land was described as Union Estate or Old Bite. These women claimed to have been on that land, to have been born on the land, to have worked the land, to have lived on the land, to have farmed the land. But Mr. Christie said he owned the land. And so he brought an action in the magistrate. Can you
That's Bahamanization. That's Bahamanization.
Listen, you want me to take you on? Because I can tell you pieces of being nice to you. That dumbness you gave it this morning, I didn't touch it heavily. So don't be careful.
Honorable Member for Anglican.
Go ahead, your point of order. Go ahead.
A point of order, Member for Tall Pines.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, the point of order is the point, seeing that the good member is still ranting and raving about my death. Section 33, 20, Section 27, F. To offer an explanation of some material part of his speech, which is being misunderstood, Mr. Speaker. Seeing that she's still ranting and raving. Mr. Speaker, the part of my speech, Mr. Speaker, that is being misunderstood by the member for Angliston, and she keeps ranting and raving about Bahamanization, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm on a point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Member for Angleston.
Mr. Speaker, the member took great liberty to continuously talk about my definition of Bahamianization, and I'm saying on the point of order, Mr. Speaker, I want to explain the misunderstanding. The members are turning around and ranting and raving about my understanding about Bahamianization as if I don't know what the term of Bahamianization is. It was, Mr. Speaker, and I would submit to explain to how I understand when it's being used in a policy perspective about immigration and etc. The point I was trying to make is giving a different perception of what Bahamianization means to me. Just as her member for South Andres was able to say he could build on whatever ideas he has. My perception of Bahamianization goes beyond whether or not you are saving positions of Bahamians through immigration, etc., etc. My explanation and my speech, Mr. Speaker, was Bahamianization is Bahamians doing something that advances Bahamians, empowers Bahamians. And it's the same concept whether you put it in policy for immigration versus as we're doing it in land reform. So the member for Angleston to do what she wishes and things which she wishes and have her opinion, but then she tries in her speeches to try and belittle somebody else's opinion.
Thank you, Honorable Member.
First of all, the language used by this member, highly disrespectful. When I speak in this parliament, Speaker, I don't rant and rave. I speak for the people. No, sit down. You use the language of ranting and raving, Speaker. Speaker, I just took my seat because there's some members in the back of me who try to distract me, but not today. Not today, Mr. Speaker. Let them have a party, but not today. I'm going to speak about these Cat Island women. When H.G. Christie took their land, they went to jail. We can talk about that today in this parliament, Speaker. What did y'all do about it? What happened there? What did y'all do about it?
Honorable members.
What happened there?
Honorable members.
Huh? She was in the cabinet 20 years later. What you do
Honorable members, the member for Angleston has the floor. Permit the member for Angleston.
What you did about it?
No, my time ain't running. No, my time ain't running. My time ain't running now, Speaker. No way. No way.
Honorable members, permit the member for Angleston
I am
to
being
make a
interrupted by
contribution.
these members. It ain't gonna work today. Ain't gonna work today.
Honorable member, you have the floor.
Speaker, you see, I want to go back to my point. The language used by this member with ranting and raving is highly disrespectful. When I speak in this parliament, just as he does, I speak. And so there's no ranting and raving. Now, what I'm hearing behind me, the noise seeking to distract, is ranting and raving. But it's not going to work today, Speaker. These women, and I can call their names again, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, the member for Tall Pines seemed to have been highly touched by me, my comments, and it's really gotten under his skin. The Bahamian people know what his explanation is, you know, how much sense it makes. So let him relax now. Let me speak, Speaker. Speaker, the three women, and I'm going to call their names again, Speaker. I'd ask you to assist me and not allow these members to disrupt me. South Eleuthera, North Eleuthera, and Tall Pines.
Carry on, honorable member.
Speaker, it's not funny, Mr. Speaker. It's a serious matter.
Honorable member.
It's not funny. I see humor in the matter. It's not funny, Mr. Speaker. I have the right to speak in this parliament. It's a deliberate purpose.
Honorable member.
This is the Deputy Speaker doing this, Mr. Speaker.
No one is trying to suggest that you don't have the right to speak.
Thank you. Then I will do some, Speaker. Those women are, and I call their names again, Adeline and Bristol, Janetta Roll, they went to jail for 28 days. And you know, bullying in this parliament, they got to show them that, Speaker. And Virginia Roll, who went to jail for 21 days, Speaker. And at the end of the day, Mr. Christie got his land. And then I'm reminded that in Grand Bahama, the member for East Grand Bahama would remember this, would know this, that some 150,000 acres of land was sold at $2.80 an acre. I said not $280, $2.80 an acre. And the person who oversaw the process was the minister, the lawyer, and later became the consultant. So I'm trying to put into context, Mr. Speaker, the experience of land. You don't know your history? Please, St. Anne's, help him, please. Speaker, I want to put in context the history of land in this country. Because if you go back even to the 18th century, and you look at how land ownership and slaves were not owners of land, Speaker. So you had that issue, and then you had the issue of people in government using political power to access, exploit, political power with the means of increasing wealth, which included land. And so this is where we are. The Progressive Liberal Party, because someone asked me what you do about it, so I'll tell them what we did about it. They enacted the Movable Property Act. And what it did, it looked at this issue of land because there was an understanding of what had happened. And in fact, it dealt specifically with land for foreign investors. And if the project did not come off, what the circumstances were. It's a complex piece of legislation that was passed at that time for the purposes of protecting land for Bahamians. The Free National Movement Administration, which succeeded in 1992, the first thing they did, I think it was actually the first piece of legislation, was to amend that law with the International Persons Land Holding Act. And that came about because of the lobby of their financiers and supporters and high-ranking supporters who wanted that law changed. And so they changed it. So now we have the situation where there are limited controls with alienation of land to non-Bahamians. Land is sold on the internet. And hence, here we are in this current dilemma. And we have seen over the years, under successive administrations, that Crown land has been used as a concession for towards foreign direct investment. And I think that, Speaker, I said successive administrations. And Mr. Speaker, this must cause us, Mr. Speaker, to have cause to think whether or not we have to revisit the issue of a government, a political administration using Crown land for concessions, Mr. Speaker. And in fact, I think that this government, or any government that succeeds them if they choose not to do so, must look to consider putting in place a moratorium on the use of Crown land as a concession to foreign direct investors. And I tell you why I say that. I tell you why I say that, Speaker. Speaker, and before I tell you why I say that, I want to refer to another issue. And that is the Prime Minister's indicated that he is doing an audit on Crown land. And as a result, the processing of applications of Bahamians for Crown land has been put on hold while this process is being undertaken. I don't know the nature and extent of this audit, but I can tell you that I hope it is not a tacky, narrow political exercise, but instead a genuine analysis that goes pre-1967, that looks to things like what happened in Grand Bahama, that what happened in Cat Island, that we look at how pre-1967 the land was exploited by the then administration, the UBP, and that we're able to get an analysis. We do not want this administration to come and say, well, the PLP do this, or whatever the story may be. We want a genuine understanding of how land has factored into our history and how we have been shortchanged by whatever processes. Now, and that includes the Cat Island land. Today we are we're talking about, and I think the member for Pine Ridge asked the question, it's 10 lots on an acre of land. And I don't object to that, because any activity that allows housing for anybody or any group of people is something to be welcomed. But in terms of what we are facing, it is tiny and minuscule in terms of what the demand is out there.
One step at a time, one step at a time.
As we are all aware, or we should be aware, we have hundreds, if not thousands, of Bahamians on long lists. I come across them all the time in my constituency, waiting for houses through the Bahamas Mortgage Corporation or the Department of Housing. And so, in truth, we spent a whole day debating it, and there's nothing wrong with that, because we are elucidating an issue of housing and land. But we are not really advancing in a substantive way this dilemma that we're facing in this country, which is the shortage of housing and the desire of so many Bahamians to access housing. The issue of marijuana. The Christie administration set aside 9,999 acres of land in marijuana. It was placed in a jointly owned entity as part of a joint venture. The joint venture with a foreign investor, the I Group. And the way it was arranged is that when a lot was sold, that there'd be a division between the state and the investor. The succeeding administration stopped that. They said it was excessive, it was too much land, and it's a lot of land. We got to face that fact. It's a lot of land. And what they did, they pulled back 5,800 acres and allowed the investor to hold 2,000 plus acres. Now that investor was supposed to do the following. He's supposed to build an airport, a boutique lodge resort. This is after getting and let me just say, they gave him 2,000 acres outright. The Christie administration did not vest the land. The Ingram administration vested 2,000 acres in this entity for an investor. They were supposed to build an airport, a boutique lodge resort, a housing subdivision with a minimum of 500 houses, roads, electricity, wastewater treatment, telephone, cable, infrastructure, marine and related projects. That was more than about a decade ago now. If anyone been to Mayaguana recently, you see that ain't happening. And then they further, but what they inbuilt into that was the option to recover almost 3,000 acres. So you basically, while they took a political position, they ended up really agreeing to agreeing in principle to giving this investor, in fee simple, more than 5,000 acres of land in Mayaguana. Of course, as I've indicated, nothing has happened, and the investor's still holding the land. He owns it. He owns it. It's a valuable asset to him, but it's an invaluable asset to the people of Mayaguana and to the Bahamian people. But now, we're hearing about the Panama Canal, Speaker. Now, I heard the Minister of Transport talking about this Panama Canal-like thing that they're going to do in Mayaguana. Based on my knowledge, because I served in that seat, this is disguising a true intent, which is the mining of rock, calcium carbonate, which is used in cement, glass, concrete, asphalt, pharmaceuticals. And of course, you need a harbor to transport this thing,
boy, you got it.
Speaker. But you know, this raises the question about our natural resources. And I think that there was a request for a select committee, I believe it was put on the table, to look into this issue. But we don't want to touch it. No. This is like land, which is a natural resource, and how that has evolved over the generations, Speaker. You understand? And so, Speaker, this is part of the patrimony of the Bahamian people. And the member for Bamboo-Town would have, at one time, would have been a keen advocate. He'd have been the voice, remember? Remember?
He was there with me.
But now you're talking about the Panama Canal, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, I want to say, Mr. Speaker, I do not support this. And I'm inviting Bahamians to wake up, because this is not the days when we will continue to be exploited. It ain't gonna happen. It ain't gonna happen, Mr. Speaker. It ain't gonna happen. Bahamians are not going to sit down and allow this exploitation that has been our history, that has Bahamians where they are, basically struggling through the world, Speaker.
That's our opinion.
Speaker. And so, Mr. Speaker, I'm inviting Bahamians to wake up to what we have left, to see what is happening in this Bahama land, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, Prince George Dock, Mr. Speaker. That's prime real estate, Mr. Speaker. Prince George, we're talking about real estate and land.
Honorable members.
I understand the point.
The member, did you recognize this honorable member for Bamboo-Town?
It's not on a point of order, point of information, Mr. Speaker. The good member mentioned both my portfolio and a project that I have spoken to in the public domain. And Mr. Speaker, I want the member to be assured that that project is before the government, it's being considered. And that member would know that this administration has committed itself to doing that which is right by the Bahamian people. In order to create a harbor, you need to dredge. And in any situation where there's any dredging, the government of the Bahamas will have its say in whatever profits it is that is made from said dredging. Period.
Speaker, you know, I don't know any such thing that the member said. I'm keeping my eye on this administration. I'm keeping my eye on this administration. And we got to watch Mayaguana, because we're talking about calcium carbonate in Mayaguana, Speaker, and the transport of that. Listen, man, Bahamians could put two and two together and one together, man. Prince George Dock, prime real estate, and we got to watch this very carefully.
Talk about it.
There's an RFP process going on right now, but one of the front runner the front runner, is a non-Bahamian foreign entity which is partnered with another Bahamian entity, which already has involvement at the Arawak Port development, Mr. Speaker. At the Arawak Port. Speaker, 90% of trade is done by sea. And Speaker, can you imagine if 90% is done by sea of trade, when you start giving a monopoly, what you are saying to every Bahamian about the control of pricing and all those issues, Mr. Speaker?
Yes.
It's a serious matter, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, very serious, yes.
On the Prince George dock, they've had limited or no, according to what I've heard, taxi drivers said they've not said a word to them. The other stakeholders there, no meeting. The minister in the papers all the time, you know, so he's very good at being on TV and all that. He's all in, and they have not yet spoken to the stakeholders at Prince George dock, Mr. Speaker. And I want to say to them out there, the rentals, the ferries, the straw vendors, the hair braiders, the taxi drivers, the tour operators, keep your eye on this lack of consultation by this administration. All the newspapers, all the business section, Tribune all the time. All the time, the business section, Tribune.
Every day,
you know?
every day.
Y'all notice that?
I recognize the honourable member for Freetown.
The honourable minister knows the process. The honourable member for Angliston, I'm sure, would know the process. We started with an RFP. We've requested proposals. The government will evaluate the proposals, or there's an evaluation committee that will evaluate the proposals. We'll come before the cabinet. The cabinet will decide what they would wish to do, and then we will begin the consultation process of how it's going to be rolled out, right? We're going to speak to them. We'll allow them to get involved in the process to determine the final outcome. So I don't want her to think for 1 minute that we are not going to consult with the Bahamian people. We will consult with the Bahamian people. We will listen to the stakeholders. We will pay attention to them. So relax. It's a process in motion. We are not going to bamboozle and run over people without consulting them. I get this now. I've been here 20 months. I get how this process works, okay? So don't worry, we will do that.
Speaker, we know it's a process. It's very far advanced. You're about to commit in some limited form, and you've not had one word with the stakeholders, not one word. You're in the papers all the time, Speaker. Musicians, Speaker, I am told, Speaker, that musicians have been sent home from Prince George dock. And I think this is the first in the longest period of time. Musicians have been sent home, and they've been replaced by canned music already at Prince George dock. So now we know we can have what the directions going in. It's
they send the Calypso man from Cat Island. You defend that man. Defend Cat Island man.
Speaker, I don't want no political person tell me that they gonna sell me shares in Prince George dock. I'm already a shareholder. Yeah. You ain't gonna sell me nothing. Yeah. I own that. Yeah. What you're trying to tell me is you are divesting my interest by allotting shares. So I'm talking about in what the activity out there. You are allotting shares to another new group, which I will not be a part of because I will not be participating. You know, why not? Speaker, I also searched out, you know, the busiest ports in the world are publicly owned.
Yes.
All. But in the Bahamas, we want ours. Yeah. Okay, Speaker? Porter's Key Dock, I understand there's an RFP out there, Speaker.
What?
And I'm advised there's been no dialogue or there's an intention to put an RFP if it hasn't already gone out. I've heard the minister speak to that. I'm advised there's been no dialogue with the mailboat operators on this matter. And it's a major concern because they are the primary operators out there. And there's been no dialogue. And plus, I don't know what's happening with the infrastructure work. They seem to have come to home. And then, of course, the Morgan's Bluff. There's a proposal there, and we got to watch Morgan's Bluff. And then we got to watch Abaco. Yes. We got to watch Abaco. And so we have to keep our eyes on these ports, Speaker. Keep our eye on these ports. Yeah. Keep your eye on the ports. With North Abaco, you could be assured I'm an honorary citizen of North Andhra, so you could adopt me. Okay? Speaker, these interventions do not address the structural inequities. And it's a very complicated matter, and we have to see how we move forward, Mr. Speaker. But the people of Meguana are still waiting for Crown land, while the I group is sitting as fee simple owners of thousands of acres and now apparently going to a Plan B in development. They were supposed to do a lot of things, you know. They got that land in fee simple owners, and they were supposed to build a hotel, an airport, and they haven't done it. Now we're talking about the Panama Canal. Not a day like it, Mr. Speaker. Not a day like it, Mr. Speaker. In fact, we should get that land back, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, we need to look at our law, Mr. Speaker, that deals with our natural resources, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable members.
No, I was saying the Speaker to help.
Honorable members.
Yeah, put it on.
Honorable members. Honorable member for Angleton.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, a lot of noise in here, but see, what they gotta understand now,
You get that?
saying, talking loud, and ain't saying nothing,
Yeah,
Speaker,
yeah.
nothing, Speaker.
You're right.
Speaker, the member for, and we gotta look at the laws to protect our natural resources.
Yes.
We're there. The conversation is out there.
Yes, people know it.
People are organizing.
Can't fool them no more.
You have now reached the end of the limit, and the issue now is land as one of those natural resources. We got to look at the issue of land in this country, Speaker. And so, Speaker, for those who don't know, those who are new to Parliament, which is probably 90% in here, this is an issue that I have spoken about for at least 15 years or more. It's something that I hold dear, and we have to address it, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, what we're doing today touches the thinnest layer of the surface. But, you know, like I say, it's 10 people, 10 new people. So we embrace that, Mr. Speaker. We embrace that. I want to end, Mr. Speaker, by dealing with the issue of, I saw the member for Freetown. He's got so much energy, man, talking about the unemployment. I think it was him and another minister. And the headline was interesting. They said that he's celebrating the increased joblessness. The headline said that. I know. I heard what you said. I heard what you said. It was couldn't believe it, Speaker. Couldn't believe it, Speaker. Just so we know, just in case you don't know, joblessness is a very painful state, Mr. Speaker. And you know, you have to. If you don't have a dollar, it's a serious thing. You can't even access food, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I can tell you the level of hardship for people who are out of work is mind-boggling, Mr. Speaker. It is suffering and it is torture. So I think I want to advise this government, instead you start patting yourself on the back with increased joblessness, that you instead see how you can ensure to alleviate the suffering of Bahamians in this country, especially those in Grand Bahama, where we are hearing the suffering is unimaginable. It's shocking, Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, and then, you know, of course, we have to ensure that access to social services happens with little hindrance or interference for people who need it and who to survive. And on that issue, I wanted to say that I hope that as the school year approaches, the new one, that we do not see a reduction in uniforms like we did this time, and that there will be a sensitivity to the levels of suffering in this country, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, and on the issue of the member's not here, and I don't like to speak in his absence, Southern Shore, but he was asked about the issue of rape and his initial, and he has since apologized, and he indicated that at the time he indicated that it was it's not his portfolio. He came back afterwards and he apologized, Mr. Speaker. But I want to say, I have to put on the record as a woman, and as a Bahamian woman, and Bahamian woman in leadership, that we were very, very disappointed that he did not have an absolute anxiety about his ministerial responsibility on this issue. Because the Bahamas is one of the highest countries for the incidence of rape in the world, which mostly affects women and girls. And so he has since apologized, but I think it is very important for him to have a keen advocacy and aggressive strategy that seeks to address this issue that affects women in this country, Mr. Speaker. And so, Mr. Speaker, I want to end by saying that we need true land reform. We started out with the exploitation and corruption, and here we are now, Mr. Speaker, where we're seeking to redress in some minimal way. You need fundamental structural reform that allows Bahamians to have access to land, because it's a fundamental unit of human development. And secondly, we need to ensure that land is a natural resource and that other natural resources are similarly analyzed and protected for the benefit of the Bahamian people. And finally, Mr. Speaker, I think, Madam Speaker, that we just need to, I think we have to have the courage, Speaker, to look at the history of our people and the journey, and to bring about policy and initiatives that begin to refresh the journey. Because otherwise, we'll be tinkering and swirling, and the Bahamian people will not advance, and it will not get better. Because the expectations of our people are very high, they're not low, but the delivery is not meeting the standard of expectation. And so, Speaker, I use this opportunity to say we support the land acquisition. As the member for South Andros indicated, it was something that we had begun. So we support it, and we support it even if it is for 10 people. But we need to look at this issue, because otherwise we will be alien strangers in our own land. And that cannot happen, because, you know, it will be unbearable, Mr. Speaker. It will be unbearable. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. As many, Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Fox Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker. Now, Mr. Speaker, the people that spoke about all the noise in the House,
Honourable members,
I'm sure that they will, you know, they'll cut yeah. So thank you very much, colleagues. Mr. Speaker, I am once again privileged to rise in this honorable House on behalf of the good people of the great constituency of Fox Hill. Before I speak to the resolution at hand, Mr. Speaker, I would like to express condolences to some families in Fox Hill. I would like to express condolences to Senator Johnny Ann Ramming Dorset, the former Member of Parliament for Fox Hill, and her siblings, Benjamin Ramming, Christine Nolsa, and Gina Ramming, on the passing of their sister, Doris Ramming Johnson, who will be funeralized at Mount Carey Union Baptist Church in Fox Hill on Friday. Condolences are also extended to the family of my primary school teacher, Mrs. Gwendolyn Pratt, who died on Christmas Day and was buried on January 5th. I am pleased to announce in this place that the Minister of Education and I have agreed that she and other educators like her who have given stellar and sacrificial service to the Fox Hill community should be honored in a fitting way that would stand as a testament so that those who come later would know who paved the way. I also extend condolences to the family of Don Bryce, who passed away on January 9th, less than a month after burying his son, Daniel Bryce. To the family of George DeVoe Jr., who was buried on Wednesday, the 16th of January, and to the family of Mr. Cavill Mackey, an old, established Fox Hill family. Condolences go out to the family of the late Anthony Demerit, who was buried at St. Anselm's Church, and to Mrs. Lenora Wilson and her family on the death of Danny Wilson Sr., who died on January 14th. And finally, Mr. Speaker, I would like to express condolences to the Ferguson family, who lost Ricardo Clark Ferguson and John Ferguson Jr., who died in the tragical car accident on John F. Kennedy Drive. May the souls of the dearly departed rest in peace, and rise in glory. Mr. Speaker, we are in this place to do the people's business. It is our covenant, our commitment, and our duty to the Bahamian people. This resolution is one of the deliverables we promised the Bahamian people from rally stages during the general election and enshrined it in our manifesto for national governance and in my manifesto for local representation. So we are here to deliver, Mr. Speaker. We are here to do the people's business. This is no play-play government, Mr. Speaker. And for those who delude themselves with such false comfort, it is time to wake up and smell the coffee, for indeed, it is the people's time. Mr. Speaker, because it is in the best interest of the Bahamian people and in the best interest of Foxhill, and especially for first-time home owners, Foxhill fully supports this resolution. Mr. Speaker, I am so pleased that this subdivision is named after the former Member of Parliament for the Foxhill constituency, the late Lionel Davis. Mr. Speaker, like Frank Edgecombe and George Mackey, Lionel Davis lived among us. So I was pleased to know that the previous administration was thoughtful enough to name this subdivision after a much-loved son of the soil, son of Foxhill. Mr. Speaker, this is indeed a fitting tribute to Mr. Lionel Davis, who was the member of the Progressive Liberal Party government from 67 to 77. So I was extremely disappointed when the honorable member for Central and South Andros would dirty up the tribute that his own party conferred on one of their own. My honorable colleague spoke about violence, security issue, and population density, and about moving the housing division elsewhere. Mr. Speaker, the previous administration caused a notice to be posted on the dilly tree on the eastern side of the property indicating that 1.267 acres, the same very 1.267 acres in the resolution that the Minister of Housing presented this morning would become the Lionel Davis estate. Mr. Speaker, this is the same dilly tree that Ms. Ari Gardner and Ms. Milliam Brewster sat under every day and managed everybody's business. Mr. Speaker, I know that the member for South and Central Andros is an honorable man. So I can only surmise that it was an unfortunate lapse in judgment.
Yeah, he making a mistake. He made a mistake.
But I know that he doesn't know Foxhill like that to make such assertions. In 2017, police statistics showed that the crime rate in Foxhill was 16% lower than it was in 2016, and that Foxhill had the lowest crime rate behind areas covered by the Paradise Island Police Station and the areas covered by the Airport Police Station. And up to the first half of 2018, crime in Foxhill was still trending down. So, Mr. Speaker, I am not worried. I am not concerned. I know that the honorable member for South and Central Andros will support this resolution that's going to be beneficial to the people of Foxhill. Mr. Speaker, you have heard something about the kind of man that Lionel Davis was. Mr. Davis was the caring member of Foxhill, of Parliament for Foxhill, who along with Carlton Francis developed Freedom Park. And on Freedom Park, Mr. Speaker, they erected what was called the eternal flame of freedom. For the last 15 years, Mr. Speaker, the eternal flame has been out. And so we will make it our business in tribute to Carlton Francis and Mr. Lionel Davis to make sure that that flame is relit in 2019. Mr. Speaker, something else about Mr. Lionel Davis. He played the organ at St. Anne's Church, Foxville. He tutored students who were preparing for the Cambridge junior and senior examinations. And I am told that it was he that took Bristol Street from a track road to a fully paved road. So indeed, this is a fitting tribute. This is the man who, when we came home from the birthday game, made sure we came home as returning heroes. Resolutions of this kind, Mr. Speaker, which make it possible for young people to live the Bahamian dream, are necessary, and even, I dare say, crucial at this stage of our national and local development. Mr. Speaker, the best way that I can describe what I believe to be the vast potential of this resolution is that it has the ability, along with expansion in the economy, to spark economic growth. Mr. Speaker, I am hopeful, and I feel fairly sure that many will see the service lot concept as an opportunity to do something different, to do something positive that impacts the lives of people, and especially those in Foxville. Mr. Speaker, somebody said earlier on, you get engaged, you get married, you buy a lot. It starts with buying a lot, and this is that start. Mr. Speaker, the concept of service lot is a clear indication that we have to do things, we do not have to do things as they have always been done, and we are in fact brave enough and courageous enough to do things as they have not always been done, and such is the case. Mr. Speaker, I know that young families will be drawn to this concept of lots, service lots like Lionel Davis and Foxville, Sunset Ridge and Southern Shores, and the 300 lots slated for Carmichael Road. So as the minister said this morning, there will be plenty to go around. So people need not worry. There will be something for everyone. Mr. Speaker, this resolution is about more than just service lots. We can look at what underpins it, and then we will understand that it is an opportunity to move our country, and indeed move Foxville in the direction envisioned by our forefathers. What underpins the service lot, you might ask, Mr. Speaker? We can begin with good roads. I thank the Minister of Public Works for agreeing that we could have Bernard Road in the front half of this administration. When you develop a community with service lots, then transportation becomes a very important factor of that. And Bernard Road makes it possible for economics to come to Foxville. The other thing that underpins the service lot, Mr. Speaker, is that education and good schools are all in place. For instance, young families who move into these service lots will know that there is a preschool already started at Sandiland School. So it all comes together. You're planning a whole community, not just a lot on the corner of Bristol Street and Roma Street. Then, Mr. Speaker, what else helps this service lot to be beneficial to the entire community? I am advised by the Minister of National Security that the Foxville station will become a fully divisional station, which means our own cars, our own superintendents, own buses, everything. You don't have to wait for a car to come from Elizabeth or from Wolf Road or from wherever. So we are actually creating, probably more than the Minister of Public Housing realized, we actually creating a whole community that has all the amenities in place. Then we talk about training. You have people that move into an area, there should be sufficient schools, and then there has to be training for the most vulnerable of our population. And these are the people in the employment demographic between the ages of 18 and 25. And so in Foxville, over the last 2 months after Christmas, more than 50 people were trained for new jobs, and this is part of the 10,000 jobs that have been created. So the service lot doesn't stand alone. It stands in conjunction with everything that makes up a community. Mr. Speaker, sometimes the sheer enormity of a task can bring about paralysis. One wonders where to start. How can you make a dent in getting the economy rolling full force? How to get a population educated, employed, and moving. I believe, Mr. Speaker, that these service lots can be to Foxville what City 2000 was to Carmichael. Mr. Speaker, the change theme during the general campaign was one of our slogans. This legislation is in keeping with changing systems such that their impact on the lives of everyday Bahamians, especially Foxvillians, is meaningful in positive and beneficial ways. Mr. Speaker, there is no doubt that access to affordable housing is an imperative. We cannot continue to talk about the march towards first world status if the basic need of decent housing is not part of that conversation and part of the transformative plan to get us there. And so whilst I accept that basic need for decent, affordable housing is an imperative, we must go that step further and develop all of those things that must go step by step with affordable housing. Mr. Speaker, to my mind, whilst the establishment of service lots provides access to affordable housing, this is a giant step in the right direction. I am pleased that everything else in Foxville will come together to not make this a standalone set of 10 lots, but something that has benefits around the entire community. I believe that this bold initiative in Foxville has been a long time in coming. I think the last set of lots in Foxville were done by when George Mackey was the MP for the area. So I am pleased that my government understands that at this time, it is time, as they said in the past, to step now into the future. And Foxville is ready to step now. Let's get those houses built, let's get those lots sold. Foxville, a new day has dawned. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. As many, the Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Marathon.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I rise to end this debate. Before I do, I'd like to put everything in perspective. And I begin, I'd like to quote the good member from Angliston. And she said, and I quote, in this honorable, Angliston, I'm sorry, the good member from Angliston, she said, and I quote, just a few moments ago, what are you saying to Bahamians about control of pricing? And Mr. Speaker, I think that is a good point. I think that's a good point. Yeah, well, about the control of pricing at the ports, that's your wonderful. But what are we saying to Bahamians about the control of pricing? What are we saying? What are we saying to Bahamians about the control of pricing when a subdivision can be developed in Adastra Gardens and Bahamians be overcharged between $13,980 and $18,650? What are we saying to Bahamians? What are we saying to Bahamians about pricing? I mean, I want to know, what are we saying? And I know that the good member, first of all, I know and I understand how things go, but I want to know, what are we saying about pricing? What are we saying about pricing? Mr. Speaker, what are we saying about pricing? What are we saying about pricing when we can have subdivision works where a developer under the Christie Davis administration poses to charge my ministry $4 million or so for work that has been valued by the Ministry of Works for a little over $300,000. What are we saying about pricing, Mr. Speaker? What are we really saying about pricing? Mr. Speaker, I don't want Bahamians to be fooled by this debate.
Honourable member, the chair recognizes the honourable member from Mangrove Key, South and Central Andros.
Mr. Speaker, unless the member from Marathon could verify that what he's just said, he must withdraw it, because as a matter of fact, he is really implicated and he's calling for members by name. Mr. Speaker, all I'm saying at the end of the day, this member, unless he can verify what he's saying, he must withdraw. He must withdraw. He must withdraw. He's imputing people's reputation. He must withdraw, Mr. Speaker. That's all I'm saying.
Mr. Speaker.
Just a moment. Angerson, you wanted?
I think I thought you wanted to do at that point before because the member is referring to me and what I said, but I'm what the leader of the
honourable member
business.
Thank you, honourable member for Angerson. Honourable member for Mangrove Key. Honourable member for Mangrove Key, South and Central Andros. The member for Marathon made a statement. Are you seeking for him to withdraw it?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Are you denying?
I'm denying it, sir, because he can't.
Not because you don't know. Are you denying it because you have facts to the contrary?
No, he who asserts must prove.
Thank you very kindly. The member for Anglican says it very well. He who asserts must prove. Mr. Speaker, this member is imputing senior members and former members of the state in no small way, implicating them in a very serious charge to the nation. Mr. Speaker, if he cannot verify it, he must withdraw it.
No,
that's what I'm saying, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member.
We got to be careful what we say to the world, Mr. Speaker. Come on,
honourable member, he who asserts must prove.
Yes.
But first, before the proof, there must be a denial. Now.
I deny it. Mr. Speaker, if that's the case, I deny it.
You deny it?
I deny it.
Not true.
Some for $300,000 and get for $4 million assessed? Come on, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member for Marathon. The member
Make him withdraw it. He must withdraw it.
Honourable member for Mangrove Key has denied.
Mr. Speaker, in order for the good member from, I mean, he's a good man. Let me preface it by saying that. He's a former president of my guild at University of West Indies. He knows that. But in order for him to deny, he must have the capacity to do so. He can't speak to this issue because he was never Minister of Housing. So how, let me finish. Hold on now, let me finish because you asked me to respond. You asked me to respond. You asked me to respond. You asked me to respond.
Honourable member.
He asked me to respond. He asked me to respond. I haven't implicated any. Who have I mean, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable members, one member at a time.
Mr. Speaker, first of all, I didn't call the name of any of his colleagues. David Christie. Administration. Christie, all right, the previous administration. But listen, I don't want you, first of all, I am perfectly capable of expressing, let me finish. I am perfectly capable, well, I mean, you should be familiar with such things, but I am perfectly capable of expressing myself. Well, I didn't say that, you know. That's where your mind going. Let me finish.
Honourable members.
I don't understand it.
Honourable members, we want to maintain a certain decorum now. We don't want the debate
I wasn't
to
referring to
descend
that.
into
Speaker?
the realm of personal attacks.
Mr. Speaker, I didn't introduce that at all, you know. That's where he went. He said below the belt, as in I assume, I took that to mean during the course of the debate. But let me just say something. The only thing I was saying is that because he has never been Minister of Housing, there's certain information that he would not know, and he is not in the capacity to deny anything in that regard. And further, I said the Christie Davis administration as in reference to the previous administration. I never laid that at the feet of any particular individual. I never did. I never did. So despite the hyperbole in his response, despite that, I never did that. I never did. All I did was quote the good member who said, what you are saying to Bahamians, what are you saying to Bahamians about the control of pricing? And she did, sorry, the good member from Engliston did say that in the context during the course of her speech. I admit
Honorable
that.
member, the member
Yes, Speaker,
on a point of order, the chair
rely...
recognizes Angliston on a point of order.
Thank you, Speaker. I want to rely on the very point that the member for Tall Pines spoke of. It speaks to a member misunderstanding material part of a member's speech. What I was speaking to, Mr. Speaker, thank you. You finally came in handy. Speaker, I was speaking about, I said that 90% of trade is by sea. That means everything. Food, supplies, everything. And that when you have control of a port or the ports in the hands of an elite minority, they have a fundamental control. I wasn't talking a one-off thing about some housing division or a lawyer or whatever it is. I was speaking about a structural issue that impacts quality of life of Bahamians. I understand the members' desire to make a political point, but it's a very small one, because I was dealing with a fundamental structural issue that affects quality of life of every Bahamian and the cost of living. It's a big issue. But I understand the political point, but please do not put what I said within the context of that narrow political point. And the Speaker, I agree with the member for South Andrews. It's not honorable to do what the member just did, to refer to members who are not here, and in a personal way and in a private capacity, and to do so in a way, Mr. Speaker. It's not honorable, because there are many persons in this Parliament who are equally vulnerable. And I don't think that's what you do. I mean, that may be your style, but I don't think that advances the national dialogue, Mr. Speaker.
Wow. Thank you. Wow. Honorable member for Marathon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it could never, ever be regarded as a little point putting a Bahamian in a home. And I want the Bahamian people to listen to me and hear me good.
Honorable members. Honorable member, the member has not even referred to your statement yet. Are you on a point of order based on what was...
The member is responding to what I said, and said it would never be a small point. When you're talking about putting a Bahamian in a home. It's not a small point. That is why it became a tenet of the Progressive Liberal Party, who created the ministry in the first instance, and have housed thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of Bahamians. In fact, under the Christie administration, Speaker, over 1,000, how much was it? There was a record-breaking, more 1,500, Speaker. Record-breaking. No minister has matched that kind of record under the Christie administration. So housing, and in my presentation, Speaker, I specifically made the point, Mr. Speaker, that providing housing, even though it's 10 houses on an acre, it has value. I said that, Speaker. What I'm talking about is a structural issue. It is what impacts every single person, born and unborn in this country, about the cost of living in this country. And that is why I was saying the small political point. I didn't say giving someone a house was a small point. I said the member is making a small political point. That's what I said.
Honorable members, before we move on, let me just make something very clear. Whenever a member makes a statement that you disagree with or you are denying, it is not sufficient for you to simply jump up on a frivolous and vexatious or scandalous way and suggest that the member should withdraw it. You have to have a basis for your denial. That you have to have a basis for your denial. Honorable member. I am not speaking directly to you. Resume your seat. I'm making a general point with respect to members getting to defeat and saying, prove it, prove it, prove it. See, we do not want to get to the level of just being vexatious and frivolous. You have to have a basis. In other words, if you are denying a point made by another member, you should state upon which basis your denial is grounded. If you are unable to say upon which basis, right, that your statement and request for denial or retraction is based, then from the chair, I have to deny your intervention. You cannot just say simply, get up and say that the member should withdraw a statement without giving me a reasonable basis upon which to act. Honorable member for Marathon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I regard it, Mr. Speaker, I regard it as a singular, a deep and singular honor to be the Minister of Environment and Housing. The reason being is because in all of life, there's a dichotomy or a split in everything. In politics, it's obvious. There's that side and this side. And there's young and old, good and bad, black and white. But with housing and with environment, everybody shares the same environment, and every single person within the sound of my voice desires a home. And when we brought this resolution for debate, the other side, members of this House, some of them, not all, because they are very skilled, some of them, in the politics of division, went all over the place, bringing up all kinds of things that have absolutely nothing to do with it. So I want the Bahamian public to listen to me and listen to me good. The persons that are in this House debating, for the most part, they have a house to go to. They have a house to go to. Don't mind them talking. Don't mind them talking. They can get up here and talk, but this, that, this horse there, cow fat, but they got a house to go home to. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm trying to say. They got a house to go home to. If you out there and you're listening to me, and you don't have no house to go home to, and you need a piece of land, because the house got to be on land, right? This is your opportunity. This is your moment. That's all I'm saying. So you don't let nobody steal this moment from you. This isn't about PLP or F&M. This is about land and a house for you and your family. I encourage all Bahamians, when I say all Bahamians, to apply to the Department of Housing. This is a fundamental human rights issue. Fundamental. We intend to replicate this throughout the Bahamas and roll it out. So I want you to understand, and listen to me, and hear me good. Listen to me good, as my friends from Manchester tell me, listen to me and listen to me good. You don't worry about what people are saying, right? Because they're going home to their homes. You might be renting, but don't worry about what they say. They're going home to their homes. Some of them got electric gate. Some of them got two-story. They may be blowing AC, but you ain't got no house. Don't get caught up in the politics of this moment. You don't worry about, they can bring up all but work permit. You need a house. They can bring up this bill, the commercial. No. We're talking about a resolution that are going to put 10 people in homes, 370 more people to come. We're going out throughout the country. That's what we're talking about. Let's stay focused. Let's stay focused. And we know in this country that the average household is headed by a single woman. We're talking about single women. Right? I come from a single parent household. I come from that. So all I'm saying, don't let anyone out there dissuade you. If you had a couple dollars in the bank, even if you don't have none, we could work with you. That's what the Bahamas Mortgage Corporation, we are going to work with. This is your moment. So don't mind the rubble. Don't mind the rubble. Don't mind any of that. Stay focused. Stay the course. Because as the former Prime Minister said when they was knocking down homes, mom was the word, but mom ain't the word now. Right? Mom ain't the word now. This is an opportunity. So, Mr. Speaker, I stood up. You're talking about homes, man. You're talking about homes. So, Mr. Speaker,
honorable members,
Mr. Speaker.
Honorable members, permit the member for Marathon to continue.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. See, Mr. Speaker, that is the classic style. But I remain focused, and this government remains focused. And at the beginning, I said, I rise to end this debate, Mr. Speaker. It was my pleasure, and I so move. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable members, let me just say this before we proceed. I'll give you a brief experience that I had as a young, honorable members, as a young attorney. And I was in court, waiting my turn as a young attorney, and a senior member of the bar was presenting a quieting petition on behalf of a 96-year-old woman for a number of acres of land. And the judge responded that we have already completed that. We did that several weeks ago, didn't we? And the attorney response was, no, my lady, this is a new petition. We have already finished with that petition. That one was on behalf of a 95-year-old woman. And this today was a petition on behalf of a 96-year-old woman. And as I sat there, I said, Lord, we really need land reform in this country. And so this initiative today only underscores that need. We know the history of land in this country and the way it has been used to exploit and to manipulate persons and even to deprive persons of their constitutional rights to possess land. And so I just wanted to say that to indicate the type of activities related to land that happens in this country. Because we all know that it's very unlikely that a 96 and a 95-year-old would be interested in acquiring any land. So obviously that petition was naturally being done on behalf of someone else who had interest in that land. And with that, I'd say it has been moved and seconded that the following resolution be agreed and passed. Whereas the Treasurer of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, the Treasurer, and a corporation sole established under Section 4, subsection 1 of the Ministry of Finance Act, Chapter 23, Statute Law of the Bahamas, the Act, is seized in fee simple in trust for Her Majesty in right of the government, of our government, of the said Commonwealth, for the public purposes of the hereditaments described in the schedule hereto attached, the hereditaments, and whereas by correction, now therefore be it resolved that pursuant to section 5 subsection 3A of the Act, this House approve the conveyance by the treasurer to the purchaser of the hereditaments for the nominal sum of $10 in the currency. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. The resolution is hereby agreed. Further resolutions? Member statements. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Centerville.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. First of all, just would like to wish the hardworking people of Centerville, Farm Road and Grantstown, and the Bahamian people at large a Happy New Year. I would also like to acknowledge the late Sir Lyndon Pindling and the brave men and women that would have fought for majority rule. It was Sir Lyndon who encouraged us, Mr. Speaker, to fight for the things we deserved. And I also want to pay homage to the late Sir Cecil Wallace Whitfield, who reminded us that leadership is important, and there is one leader. However, he leads among equals. So always be free to express yourself, free to disagree, but understand that it must all work for the betterment of the Bahamian people. Just for immediate and future reference, Mr. Speaker, I will be running in the 2022 elections in Centerville, and I will win. I will go nowhere, Mr. Speaker, until we have new and better schools for our children in Centerville, until we have food on the table for our people in Centerville, until taxes are progressive and not regressive, until we have a better and cleaner water system and a safer community for our children, until Bahamians become the owners of their country and their economy. Centerville would like to thank the Royal Bank of Canada for their donation to the Over the Hill project. We also want to congratulate Mr. Robert Turnquist on his appointment as chairman of the Over the Hill Foundation. By extension, Mr. Speaker, we want to congratulate Mrs. Erica Wells-Cox on her appointment at the OPM. Hopefully this would lead to better communication even amongst parliamentarians. We also congratulate Mrs. Shelley Ann Lockhart-Pratt on her appointment as registrar. And we would also encourage her in Centerville to pay attention to political JPs and affidavits that are ruining the very fabric of our country and our society. We continue to encourage the Ministry of Works to ensure our roads, McCullough Corner, are kept and our young men are given opportunities to feed their families. We encourage the churches in the Centerville community to be deliberate in their discipleship through deliberate interaction with our children. Mr. Speaker, Centerville has yet to receive information regarding the police shooting of D'Angelo Evans in the McCullough Corner area last year. This concerns me as a representative. Garbage collection remains an issue for Centerville. We have asked for names of contractors, but we're told after months and months, well, you know, it's just split into different quadrants and we don't know yet. So I don't know what that means. But as a member of Parliament, I would like to know who the companies are that are responsible for garbage collection. You see, Mr. Speaker, the issue of predators and social behavior is a concern in Centerville. It's a matter of due diligence and character referencing in order to better serve the Centerville community. We are holding people accountable not only for the work, but for their social behavior and interactions with our children. Centerville needs to know who are contracted to do work in our schools, whether it's during hours or after hours. Again, a matter of due diligence and character referencing, an issue of social behavior and safer communities. Centerville is still concerned that the unemployment rate in our area is still very high, and the impact of social services reduction is negatively impacting our community. Last year, Centerville would have spoken to the Citizen Security and Justice Program, which significant funding is supposed to be geared towards at-risk youths. We have yet to see, feel, or measure the impact of these funds on the lives of our at-risk youths. Centerville is here, Mr. Speaker, to serve a purpose, and that is to better the lives of every Bahamian through service and through God's will. Finally, Mr. Speaker, I would like to also, Centerville would have introduced the Centerville Thumbs Up Award to persons who transcend politics and demand justice and fairness among our people. And she will join Clint Watson, Andrew and Gina Knowles with the Centerville Thumbs Up Award. And Centerville will be giving this award to the active Chief Justice Vera Watkins, as we thank her for her tremendous service to the future of this country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and may God continue to bless us all and continue to bless the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable members, just before we proceed, we should have done this prior to the member for Centerville. I would like for us to rise in a moment of silence on the passing of a former colleague in this parliament and a cabinet minister, on the passing of Irvin Knowles. Thank you, honorable members. Honorable members, also, we request that you keep in your prayers the former member and former speaker of this honorable House of Assembly, Oswald Ingram, as we have been informed earlier today that he is currently hospitalized. And whenever sickness comes upon us, we know who is our healer. And so we ask God's healing spirit to be released in favor of the former speaker of this place, Oswald Ingram. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Seabreeze.
Speaker, and Mr. Speaker, I'd like to just quickly say Happy New Year to you and to the members of this honorable House. Mr. Speaker, I rise to bring to the attention of members the Junior Junkanoo Parades that will be held beginning from this weekend throughout the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. And we begin with the parades in Grand Bahama on Saturday, the 26th of January. And I will be there with our darlings in Grand Bahama to support them in this feeder system program, which is a formal or formative expression of our culture, and it's very, very deep seated and rooted in our people, and so it's so important to support the children and to support our culture. And so I'll be there in Grand Bahama. In New Providence here, we'll have the Junior Junkanoo Parade on Thursday, the 31st of January, right here downtown Nassau. In Eleuthera, the parade will be held on Saturday, the 2nd of February, 2019, in South Andros. It will be held on February 8th. In Mayagüana, it will be held on Saturday, the 16th of February in Abaco. It will be held on Friday, the 22nd of February. In Cat Island, it will be held on Saturday, the 2nd of March in Acklands. It will be held on Saturday, the 9th of March in Inagua, Saturday, the 16th of March. And so, Mr. Speaker, I also want the members to know that in some of these areas or islands, Junior Junkanoo was not held before, and so this is a maiden voyage or first time for a few of them. And I want to congratulate those islands and the various members of Parliament and encourage all of us to be there, to support the children, to support our culture, to support the future of Junkanoo in this country. And so I wish all of the members here Happy New Year, and I look forward to their support and thank the honorable members for their support during the senior parades of Boxing Day and New Year's Day. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, honorable member. Chair recognizes the honorable member for Marco City.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to express condolences to the family of Basil Ramming, to Sarah and the entire family, to Mr. Franklin McCoy, his family, especially Michelle and all of the other relatives, and also to my sister and her entire family on the passing of their matriarch, our matriarch, Netta Lockhart. May their souls rest in peace. I'd also like to indicate I will be in office tomorrow evening, and certainly welcome all constituents who have concerns to see me on Thursday and again on Saturday. Mr. Speaker, just as a point of clarification for the public with respect to a comment made by the Member of Parliament for Angliston, the PPP that is being proposed for Portaski has not yet been initiated. And however, despite the fact that it has not yet been initiated, we have begun the consultation process, met with both associations, at the Vendors Association at Portaski. We intend to also meet with the Mailboat Association, which is pivotal to anything that we do. And it's a multi-ministry approach, as well as members of the private sector, including the Downtown and Paradise Island Development Association. So we certainly will be doing that.
For the member statement, Chair recognizes the honourable member for East Grand Bahama.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I just wanted to take this opportunity to express condolences on the passing of two very significant figures in our community in East Grand Bahama, both of whom would have been around for the struggle for majority rule, and who would have represented their communities significantly, particularly in support of their husbands, who would have had frontline roles, so to speak. I speak of Miss Irene Cooper from Freetown. Her husband, Elder Genius Cooper, who predeceased her, was a very well-known and respected elder in the community of East Grand Bahama. And his wife was equally very instrumental in the advancement of democracy in the Bahamas, in Grand Bahama in particular. And certainly we will miss her. A day later, her sister-in-law, Miss Ludell Cooper, passed away. We say they must have had this planned. But again, a very instrumental and productive young lady who would have served her community very well. And I want to express my condolences to the family. It's a very large family, and who continue to contribute to our islands and to our community. And I have a little bit more to say about that family at a later date, because they're doing some things for their community that I think that most young Bahamians should emulate. Just speaks to the legacy of their parents. I want to also announce, for the benefit of the residents of Grand Bahama, that the Small Business Development Center will be launching officially in Grand Bahama on the 31st of 31st of January. And we will hold a function at the Christ the King Auditorium at 6:30, and I just want to invite all persons who may be interested in the support and the funding and training that the Small Business Development Center support. The Small Business Development Center will provide to come out and to participate in that function. We will be holding separate launch events at both 8 Mile Rock as well as in East Grand Bahama. And I don't have the dates with me, unfortunately, but it's around the same dates. And I will seek to make sure that that information is aired. But again, this is an effort by the government to assist entrepreneurs and would-be entrepreneurs to present their ideas, to receive the necessary training, assistance with capital, as well as mentorship to ensure, as best we can, their success. And so I want to encourage persons to come out and take advantage of the opportunities that will be provided through this program. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Further member statement? There being no further member statements, I just wish to invite all of the residents in Polling Division 8 and 9, that is in the Soldier Road area, Windsor Place area in the Nassau Village constituency, to a children's party that is being organized and hosted by Mr. Robert Delancey with the support of the Member of Parliament and other corporate sponsors in the area. That will be on Saturday the 26th of January, beginning at 1 p.m. Also, for the benefit of members, we are adopting a slight change in the procedure for the register of attendance, so that we are inviting members to indicate to the clerk or to the chair, particularly ministers when they are out of the jurisdiction on government business, and other members who may not be in New Providence but still conducting their affairs as representatives in their communities, particularly the Family Island members, so that it can be noted when you are unable to cross the bar. We have to mark you absent, but we can mark you absent with an explanation so that we don't have the type of reports going out when we supply the media with the statistics of attendance. So I'm just putting you on notice so that as we proceed in 2019, you can notify the clerk or the chair so that a record could be made in the register and we can give explanations. Appointments of select committees. Instruction, the chair recognizes the honorable member for Angliston.
Thank you, Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm inquiring on the 28th of November, I gave notice of an intention to request for a select committee, and I'm just wondering whether the House is able to advise when we are able to address that issue. I also see there are at least 3 other select committees on there, Mr. Speaker. It's on the agenda.
It's on the agenda.
Yes, that's the Speaker. It's in November, and so I'm just bringing to the attention of the House so that we can get a date to begin that process, Mr. Speaker.
Noted.
Thank
noted.
you, Mr. Speaker.
I will have the clerk. Okay, we were on instructions to select committees, discharge of select committees, notices for future meetings. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Centerville.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Centerville would like to renew the notices for a select committee that is on the agenda. We'd like to renew those. But Centerville would also like to add 2 more to that agenda item. I would like to give notice for future meetings to this House to call for a select committee of the House to investigate all matters relative to public-private partnerships, joint ventures, inclusive of the Bahamas government policy, partnership policy, and the Bahamas investment policy, to determine the economic impact, adequate corporate governance structure, and legislative compliance of named projects, to consider and suggest the best way forward to ensure accountability and transparency so that the birthright of every Bahamian is protected, with powers to send for persons and papers, with leave to sit from place to place, and with leave to sit during recess. That one I would like to add to...
Honorable member, just before you proceed,
yeah.
Order that the notice be brought up.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, with your allowance, I'd like to call...
Just a moment.
Sorry.
Order that the notice do lie on the table. Further notices for future meetings.
Mr. Speaker, with your allowance, thank you. I would like to call for a select committee of this House to investigate all matters relative to Derek Clayton Roll King, a Bahamian, to determine the financial, legislative, and economic impact of laws governing dormant accounts and inheritance thereto, and related international financial services, to investigate decisions and related matters as it pertains to Mr. Derek Clayton Roll King, and any inheritance therewith, to consider and suggest the way forward to ensure that every Bahamian is legally protected at the highest power, with powers to send for persons and papers with leave to sit from place to place and with leave to sit during recess.
Order that the...
Well, that would be to investigate.
Order that the document be brought up.
Okay. Finally, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable member.
Sorry, thank you, sorry.
Order that the notice do lie on the table. Further notices for future meetings.
Yes, please accept, Mr. Speaker, this letter that I am going to table as my request to present to this Parliament under agenda item notice of future meetings on the related issue as follows. This letter would have been copied to Mr. Renwood Wells, Leader of Government Business of the House of Assembly, Mr. Picewell Forbes, Leader of Opposition, and Mr. Philip Davis, Chairman of the Public Accounts Committee. I here tender my resignation.
Honorable member.
Yes.
It appears as if you want to table a letter.
Yes.
That would not fall under this.
Well, it's giving notice for a future meeting to present under this on this related issue.
It should be in the form of a notice and not in the form of your letter.
Gotcha. Okay. So
you can do of what?
I'm tabling the letter.
Mr. Speaker.
Just a moment. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
Mr. Speaker, if the member chooses that he no longer wishes to participate in any committee of the House, he simply informs the chairman there's a need to table the letter in this place.
No, it needs to be tabled because it needs to be on record as to the reasons for the resignation. I think it's important for the future generations of this country. And I would like to table my letter of resignation from the Public Accounts Committee with immediate effect. And in this request, I would have asked you to present to this Parliament on this particular letter and issue. So this is a summary of the reasons why I am resigning from the Public Accounts Committee, and I would like it tabled in this House of Assembly. And with this letter, I'm requesting that I have a few minutes prior to the next sitting to present to this House a reason why I would have, I'm resigning from the Public Accounts Committee.
Mr. Speaker.
Honorable member, there is no difficulty in what you are proposing.
Okay.
It is just that this particular point in our order of business is not the appropriate time.
Okay.
What you can do is request of the chair the opportunity to address the matter in the next sitting. Once you give me adequate notice, then you will be afforded that opportunity.
Great, I will do so. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Further notices for future meetings?
Glennis, you all want to renew your issues? We can swipe it off.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Angleton.
Speaker, the opposition renews all notices that are on the agenda.
Thank you, honorable member. Further notices? The chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to renew all matters in the name of the government and to signal, Mr. Speaker, that and move that the House adjourns until 10 a.m. Wednesday, the 30th of January, 2019.
Second.
Honorable members, we're moving a little prematurely. Adjournment. Chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
Mr. Speaker, again, we will be debating at the next sitting of the House the fiscal strategy report, Mr. Speaker. As members would know, we passed in the House last year the Fiscal Responsibility Act, which mandates that the government of the Bahamas the Ministry of Finance was to prepare a fiscal strategy report, which was tabled in this House in November of last year. That fiscal strategy report has to be debated before the 31st of January. And the whole concept is that this House, after the debate, is supposed to inform the Ministry of Finance as to its findings or as to the direction it believes the fiscal strategy report or the economic direction of the country should be. And we will have that debate on next sitting Wednesday. And so now, Mr. Speaker, I do move that the House adjourns until 10 a.m. Wednesday, January 2019. The 30th.
The 30th of January. Is there a second now?
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that this House adjourns to 10 a.m. Wednesday, the 30th of January, 2019. As many as in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. Final adjournment.
Mr. Speaker, I do now move that the House adjourns.
It's been moved and seconded that the House be adjourned to 10 a.m. Wednesday, the 30th of January, 2019. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. The House stands adjourned to 10 a.m. the 30th of January, 2019.